So during the presentation, we'll be automatically muting all of the microphones who are not presenting until the end of the presentation. This webinar includes several opportunities to share your input and interact using the chat tool, but we will not be sharing your name, so we will be protecting your privacy when we answer those questions. If you haven't used Zoom in the past, you can find the chat tool is this little kind of bubble looking icon at the bottom of your screen. It's going to look kind of like a cartoon bubble. And as I mentioned, we'll be recording the webinar, so you and others can view it later. But we'll stop the recording during the question and answer discussion at the end of the presentation, again, to respect your privacy. This webinar is part of a 5-part flood education series that was created as an interagency collaboration with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Pennsylvania Silver Jackets, along with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority, the Allegheny County Conservation District, the Three Rivers Wet Weather Organization, and the Watersheds of South Pittsburgh Organization. I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce you to the other two speakers that we have with us today. So Beth, if you could introduce yourself, followed by Lisa.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Beth Dutton. I'm Senior Project Manager at the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority.
Good evening, everyone. I am Lisa Brown, and I am the Executive Director of Watersheds of South Pittsburgh, a nonprofit that works in watershed and water resources in the South Hills of the city of the county.
Thank you both. And Lisa is also going to be monitoring the chat for us today. So she'll be the person that's going to kind of be fielding the questions as they come in, and also she'll be running the poll. So if you have any questions, you can kind of say something specifically to Lisa if you don't want to share them to the entire group in the chat. All right, so So today we're going to focus on answering the questions of how you can find out where flooding is happening in your area, what you can do to protect yourself, your family, and your home when it does flood, and who can you call when it's flooding. To start things off, Lisa from the Watersheds of South Pittsburgh organization is going to talk about how you can find out some about the flooding that may be occurring in your area.
Thank you, Mary. Let's begin to explore those questions. So first question, is there even a flood risk? We all know someone who faced a major flood with ample warning and explicit preparation instructions. Noah had the advantage of personal communication with the Almighty, but without divine intervention, how do the rest of us learn when and how to prepare ourselves? Next slide, Mary. So, is it flooding? How do you find out? From fire whistles to tweets, there are many ways in which to find the information you need. Let's put our heads together and list everything we can think of to answer these questions. So we have 3 questions out there. How do you find out about emergency weather warnings? Who do you call to report? What resources does your local community have for emergency warnings? And how do people without internet or smartphone access find out about severe weather? Please type your responses to the questions above in the chat. When responding, designate Q1, Q2, or Q3, depending on which question you're responding to. We're going to give you guys a minute or two to put your responses in the chat. Thank you. Oh, come on, folks. So we have some folks who say TV. Yes, that's one of the main sources. In fact, I was watching the news tonight and they were saying, you know, with severe weather on KDKA, you can check out their responses on the news cell alerts through the local fire department and TV. That was for question 2. Fire whistle, question 2. So iPhone, but I worry about people who don't have them. That's true. Anything else? Your neighbors, that's always a good one. They can help you out. If your neighbors, that was for question 3. Anything else? Looks like we've kind of slowed down. So let's check the ones that we've looked at and sort of compare that. So Mary. So sources for flood alerts. These are some useful sources for flood alerts with links for more information on how to access them. The Emergency Alert System is a national public warning system that allows the president to address the American people within 10 minutes during a national emergency. The alerts are sent through broadcasters, satellite digital audio services, direct broadcast, satellite providers, cable television systems, and wireless cable systems. The emergency alert system is also used by state and local authorities for important emergency information, such as severe weather and imminent threats, Amber Alerts, and incident information that's targeted to specific areas. Wireless emergency alerts are free messages sent directly to your cell phone warning you about severe weather. To ensure that emergency alert systems are activated on your cell phone, check your settings, go to notifications, and go to emergency alerts to ensure that it's on. Make sure your phone is charged and not in silent or airplane mode. Another method is the NOAA Weather Radio All Hazards Network. So NWR is a nationwide network of radio stations that broadcast continuous weather information from the nearest National Weather Service office based in your physical location. NWR broadcasts official warnings, watches, forecasts, and other hazard information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It also broadcasts alerts of non-weather emergencies, such as national security or public safety threats, through the emergency alert system. However, the caveat with the NWR is that it requires a special radio, receiver, or scanner capable of picking up the signal. So not everybody has access to that. The National Weather Service also offers weather conditions and forecasts and updates through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. Community notification enrollment or code red weather warnings are automatically alert you if your address falls in the path of severe weather determined by the National Weather Service. Allegheny Alerts provides emergency alerts, including emergency preparedness, weather advisories, and flood cleanup on any devices you select. Email, text, voice. They use the Everbridge platform. The FEMA mobile app has information to help you prepare for an emergency, including disaster resources such as shelters and making a flood insurance claim. The FEMA app will also send you text message alerts in real time from the National Weather Service. Twitter, or tweets regarding flooding incidents, our Allegheny County has a Twitter account that reports on flooding incidents. So look for at Allegheny_County to sign up. Next one, Mary. So what you see here are two screenshots that show examples of two phone apps used for emergency alerts. On the left is the Everbridge app. As I stated before, Allegheny Alerts uses the Everbridge app. This app provides timely alerts via email, text, voice, work, home, mobile phone. You can get alerts through any or all of these apps. You can also choose the topics that are important to you. On the right is a screenshot of the FEMA mobile app, which gives you real-time flood notification and details. Now back to Mary from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Pittsburgh, who will define the different flood notification terms and their importance for you.
Thanks, Lisa. So understanding the different types of flood notifications is an important part of preparing for a disaster, because knowing these terms will help you identify which flooding hazard you might be experiencing and help you make timely decisions concerning your home and your business. So the three different flood notification terms to know are a flood advisory, a flood watch, and a flood warning. The least severe notification type is a flood advisory, and a flood advisory is issued when a specific weather event that is forecast to occur may become a nuisance. So a flood advisory is issued when flooding is not expected to be bad enough to issue a warning, but it might cause significant inconvenience. And if caution is not exercised, it could lead to situations that may threaten life or property. However, as you may have seen in your experiences, sometimes a flood advisory is issued, but then later the hazard is being called a flood watch or a flood warning because the flooding risk has become more severe. So to make yourself aware of the flood notifications and to make sure you're paying attention to how those may be progressing, if they are, it's important to check the National Weather Service during large storm events or use the flood alert apps and resources like Lisa showed you in the previous slide. So next in severity after a flood advisory is a flood watch, and a flood watch is issued when flooding may occur. So residents should stay alert in the event of a flood watch and closely monitor the rivers and streams near your home if you live near rivers and streams, and be prepared to move to high ground quickly. If there's a flash flood watch issued, this means that streams and creeks may flood and overflow. So if you live near a stream or creek, be prepared to move to higher ground pretty fast. For Pennsylvania, we have the most severe notification is the flood warning. So a flood warning is issued when flooding is occurring or will occur soon. So if a flood warning includes evacuation instructions, make sure to do so immediately. The warning may also include instructions to seek higher ground instead of evacuating your home, or you may be asked to shelter in place. So similarly, a flash flood warning, much like a flash flood watch, may occur due to rivers or stream flooding, as well as surface flooding. And it's usually issued if flash flooding is occurring or will occur. And flash floods can occur within 6 hours of the beginning of a heavy rainfall. And some guidelines for keeping safe during a flash flood include go to high ground immediately, get out of the area subject to flooding, like any low spots or washes, and do not attempt to cross a flowing stream on foot. Even 6 inches of water, if it's moving fast enough, can knock you off your feet. And never drive through flooded areas of standing water. Only a foot of water can carry your car away. If you are driving in the vehicle stalls, abandon it immediately and seek higher ground if you're able to evacuate the vehicle without having to walk through the moving water. Rapidly rising water may engulf the vehicle and its occupants. So it's important to be especially cautious at night when it's harder to recognize flood dangers if you are driving. And also never camp or park your vehicle along streams and washes, particularly during threatening conditions like a flood warning. So now that we know what a flood warning is, and we know that it's the most severe flood notification, what do you do if you are actually under a flood warning? So if you're at home during a flooding event, depending on the type of flooding, you might be told to either evacuate, move to higher ground, or stay where you are. If you are told to evacuate, you need to make sure you are listening to those notifications sent over the emergency alert system. That's how you'll find out if you do need to evacuate and where to go, where that evacuation route will be. The National Weather Service or the local alerting systems like Lisa went over in those instructions are also good places to find out about evacuation instructions. It's always important to listen to those instructions first and foremost. If you're instructed to evacuate but decide not to, you're not only endangering yourself, but also those first responders that might have to come in and rescue you if you chose not to evacuate. So please keep that in mind when you're deciding to evacuate or not. So the second option is moving to higher ground or an upper level of your home. If this is the case, only get on the roof if necessary, and once there, use a whistle or a flare to signal for help. If you're able to use your cell phone, that's also something you can use. Remember not to climb into a closed attic if you are going to the upper level of your home, because you could become trapped in the attic if the flood waters rise up to that level. You also may be told to stay where you are. This is also known as shelter in place. If you are told to shelter in place and you have a medical condition, make sure to contact your healthcare provider if you're sick or needing the medical attention, or if it's severe, call 911 if there's a medical emergency. We're also going to be providing some information about evacuating with a pet, an elderly person, or an individual with special needs in the resource packet that will be available after this presentation. If you are away from your home during a flooding event, do not walk, swim, or drive through floodwaters or around barricades. Like I mentioned, just 6 inches of moving water can knock you down if you're walking, and just 1 foot of moving water can sweep the vehicle away. Always make sure to stay off of bridges with fast moving water as well. So As Lisa was saying, we live in a place that floods. And if you have seen flooding occur in your community, this picture is from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette showing the location on I-376 known as the bathtub. Why is it called the bathtub? Well, it floods a lot. So we want to know if you have places in your neighborhood or your area or in the Pittsburgh area, Allegheny County, that you feel like, man, that spot always floods. And if so, if you could just take a moment to share some of those locations in the chat. And Lisa will share with us those comments.
Washington Boulevard, 4 Mile Run in the bathtub downtown. Front yard along 279 under specific rain events. I have my favorite one, which is Sawmill Run at Bousman Street, right where the red, white, and blue is. Also, Route 88 at McNeely is another one of my favorites. So, anyone else have some? I have a whole list, but.
And I'm able to see the chat now, and so I saw Nancy's comment right before I pulled up this bathtub slide. She was saying, "Hey, is there a map that shows places like the bathtub?" So very timely, Nancy. Oh, whoops, I didn't mean to say your name, but at least I didn't say your last name. But that's very timely that you said that. And I also wanted to mention, you know, we had this discussion, and we wanted to try to pull together a map like that, but it's because you know, as Beth mentioned, you can look at FEMA to find places that are typically flooded along rivers and streams in the what's known as the 100-year floodplain or the 1% floodplain. However, that's only part of the picture. So another good resource is Flood Factor. So Flood Factor can help you get an idea of places in your neighborhood that might flood a lot. Like your home or a low spot in your neighborhood, a park. Those are you know, it'll take in all the flooding risks that you may encounter in a specific region, not just from rivers and streams. Thank you for everyone that shared the locations in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County that seem to always flood. So this is an example of some locations in Sawmill Run that had some flooding reported by multiple people. So as you can see, the Allegheny County Twitter page, Twitter account provides a location of some of those areas in real time as reports come in. So as Lisa mentioned earlier, Twitter can be a really great resource for finding out about some of the areas in your community that tend to flood a lot. So that Twitter handle again is @Allegheny_CO. So now that you know some of the flooding do's and don'ts, and we talked a little bit about some places that we know of in our region that flood a lot. If you were coming up to the bathtub, let's say, or another place that where flooding is flooding the road, and you were driving, ask yourself, you know, what would you do if you were driving and all of a sudden you came upon a foot of water? So this diagram, as I mentioned earlier, this diagram has some really good kind of numbers to keep in mind. So just 6 inches of moving water, so that's just up to this fellow's ankles, can knock you on your feet. And just 1 foot of moving water, which is just up to those lower lights on this car, kind of halfway through the wheel well, can carry a small car away, and just 1.5 feet can carry an SUV away, so up to the top of the tires. So if you come upon floodwaters while driving and you're able to turn around without driving through the floodwaters, that would be the best action to take always. If you find yourself stuck in your car and the floodwaters are rising, make sure to call 911 immediately and keep these water depths in mind as you make your evacuation decisions. So say there is a flood warning and you're at home. Let's go over some fairly simple things you can do to protect your home before and during a flood. Some of you might have been in last week's webinar that talked about preparation measures that you can do to prepare your home. So you're a step ahead of the game if you were able to attend that. But we're just going to go over a few things real quick. Before a flood, you can install a sump pump to pump out excess water if there is a flood. You can also install a backup generator for backup electricity if a storm causes your power to go out. And a really important thing to do before flooding may occur is to figure out how to turn off your electricity, figure out how to turn off your water and your gas. These are all good things to know how to do in the event of any emergency. If you can install a backup generator for backup electricity, I guess I already said that one. You can, in the event that you can figure out the flood depths, like from FEMA, like Lisa was sharing. You can figure out the expected flood depths from FEMA or Flood Factor. If you can do that, you can hire a licensed electrician to raise your electrical components, such as switches, sockets, circuit breakers, and wiring, at least 12 inches above your home's projected flood elevation. So for drains and toilets and other sewer connections, installing a backwater valve or plug to prevent floodwaters from entering is also helpful. And if you have any fuel tanks, which can contaminate your basement during a flooding event, make sure that those are anchored. And if they're outside, an unanchored tank can be swept downstream and danger other people's houses. So anchor those fuel tanks both inside and outside. And like I mentioned, there's lots of other preparedness actions that you can take. So if you're in the webinar on August 10th and you'd like to share any of the things that you learned or any of the things that you know just in your own knowledge, feel free to put those in the chat. If I didn't hit any of those, it'd be great to share those with everyone as well. And also, if you missed that the presentation on preparation and mitigation in flooding, you can visit this Pennsylvania Silver Jackets website to view those recorded workshops. And if anyone has anything to share, that'd be great. If not, that's okay too. All right, and feel free to just add anything in the chat that you can think of even while I'm talking. So let's say you've, oh yeah, here we go. Fill your bathtub with water beforehand. Hadn't heard that. Is that so it doesn't float away?
No, that's so you have water. That's so you have extra water.
Ah, interesting. Cool.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that, Dave. All right, so during a flood, some things that you can do, you know, if, like I said, if you learned how to turn off your electricity beforehand, that's a good thing to do because if you may need to turn off your electrical power if there's standing water or a fallen power line. So making sure to know how to do that is important before the flooding event. And if you've been instructed to evacuate, this is also another instance where you should turn off your power, but also your gas and your water. And also having a fire extinguisher handy to make sure, and making sure everyone in the family knows how to use it during a flooding event is also super important. And yeah, so like we talked a bit about last week, you know, the last presentation about preparation for your home, that was kind of more in depth on that. We just went over a few things here, but let's also talk about some things that you can do to prepare yourself and your family in the event of a flood. So really any emergency that may require you to evacuate your home, we want to talk about building an emergency kit, and we want to give you a chance to talk about what you think should be included in an emergency kit or like a go bag. And if you want, we would love to hear your thoughts on what you would put in your go bag. And if you can share those with Lisa, she can share them back to me.
I did want to say that someone put in for the last slide to move their cleaning supplies to higher floors. Yeah, if your cleaning supplies get flooded out and wash away, then you don't have anything to clean up with. So it's a good idea to have them up high.
And they could contaminate those floodwaters and make it for a dangerous situation. So that's a really good idea. Thank you.
We're at ideas on brainstorming what items should go in an emergency go bag or kit to grab when you know a flooding incident is imminent. Medical supplies. Yep.
I saw Target is doing a thing where if you buy like 3 different, like a Band-Aid and a thing of hydrogen peroxide or any other vitamins, they'll give you a free first aid kit, which is pretty cool. So I think, there's lots of programs like that where you can get a free first aid kit or just build your own first aid kit as well. But always having a well-stocked first aid kit is crucial.
Medication and insurance papers, all of your prescriptions. Yes. They're all good suggestions. Batteries that you replace yearly when you change your smoke detector, change of clothes, dental floss. Haha. I agree. I think dental floss is a must.
And who knows what you might be able to use it for other than your teeth. So. Great. I'm going to give people another 20 seconds to give anything that they want in terms of recommendations for a go bag. We've been taking my kids camping a lot, and I always like to think the things that I'd be putting in my camping kit is what I would be probably wanting to have with me in a go bag of some kind. Those essential items, pet supplies, that's a really good one.
That is a good one.
And my dogs take medication, so I have to remember their medication and, Those are great. Thank you for everyone who shared. So I'm just going to go over this emergency prep list that's from ready.gov. So FEMA has a great list of resources on ready.gov, including this list of essential items that you should consider including in a go bag. But then, like I was mentioning, they also have great fact sheets on, how you can prepare for evacuation if you have an elderly person living in your home or a person with special needs or a pet. So ready.gov, I would definitely recommend snooping around on that. But like I said, we are going to be compiling a lot of those fact sheets for you to with your resource packet for this webinar. So some of the items that are on the that emergency preparedness kit on ready.gov include water, non-perishable food, several for several days. If you can include a can opener, that would be great, so that you can not have this can and no way to open it. Extra cell phone battery. I guess we don't really have batteries on our cell phones anymore, but if you have a charger for your cell phone, and if you are able to have, they do make those cool little like plug-in recharge things. So something like that would be really handy. Battery-powered or hand crank radio that can receive that that NOAA weather radio alert, and extra batteries for that if you're just using a normal radio. Flashlight with extra batteries, first aid kit, whistle to signal for help, a mask to help filter out contaminants, or, in the situation that we are in now with COVID, making sure to have an extra mask if you need to be in a evacuation center, a shelter-in-place center. So the masks, moist towelettes and baby wipes, garbage bags and ties. And this is for personal sanitation. If you find yourself in a situation where you need to be taking care of some toileting in an enclosed space, having that little bit of garbage bag, ties, and baby wipes will be a big help. And also a non-sparking wrench or pliers to turn off the utilities in your home, and a local map. If your phone's not working, you need to be able to figure out where you are without the Google Maps. And then there's some additional items that ready.gov also included, and those include, someone else put in the chat, like any prescription medications that you might have for yourself or your pets, in my case, and any prescription glasses maybe that you might have. If you have young children and you need to have infant formula or baby food on hand, making sure you have enough of that. Pet food, water supplies, and medications for your pet. Family documents such as copies of your insurance policies, your bank account records, your birth certificates, medical insurance cards, driver's licenses, having copies of that stuff is really helpful. You don't have to have your actual card, but that's always good too. But it'll also make sure you have some cash. Credit card machines might not be working, so have some bills and some change. And it can have a complete change of clothes, including long sleeves, long shirt, long pants, good shoes for walking if you need to, a fire extinguisher, matches and a lighter in a waterproof container, any feminine supplies or other personal hygiene items, and hand sanitizer, paper cups, plates, disposable utensils, paper towels, paper and pencils for taking notes if need be. And yeah, like I said, if you're going with kids camping or evacuating your home, it's always handy to have some books and puzzles and other things to entertain them. So now we're going to turn it back over to Lisa, and she's going to talk with us a little bit. Oh, I'm sorry, back over to Beth from the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. And so Beth's going to talk with us about who to call and when.
Thank you, Mary. This is very timely information because the Allegheny County area is actually currently under a flash flood watch as Tropical Depression Fred makes its way here. So when flooding is occurring, who should you call? In this section of the presentation, we are going to talk about 3 different types of flooding and the different community resources that you can call on to assist you. Next slide, please. So here's an example of an active sewer backup of a Pittsburgh potty. Sewage can back up into plumbing fixtures like toilets and floor drains on the lowest level of a building. Next slide. And here's another example of a backup, and this time it's in basement floor drain. So Lisa is going to run a poll, and we're going to play a game where you can match the flooding incident with who to call. So if you are having a basement sewage backup flooding incident, who should you call? A commercial company that specializes in remediation, a sewer authority, or 911. Okay, we'll give it another couple seconds. And everyone has their answers in. You did a great job on this. Yes, the first person that you would call generally is your sewer authority. So for example, in the town of McCandless, a resident would immediately call the McCandless Township Sanitary Authority, and a City of Pittsburgh resident would call PWSA dispatch at 412-255-2423, option 1, or email dispatch@pgh20.com. We will have this information printed on the slides later on, so you'll be able to access that information. So good job, everyone. Next slide, please, Mary. All right, so to give you an idea of what typically happens when a customer in the PWSA service area reports a sewage backup to dispatch, they will ask you the following questions in order to get some more information from you. So they'll want to know what time did this basement flooding occur? Was the weather clear? Was it rainy or snowy? They want to know your contact and location information. They want to know if it's currently backing up in the building. Do your neighbors also have this backup problem? Has this happened before, and was it raining? Does this occur when water is in use in the home? And where is the sewage backing up? So next, if the storm had widespread heavy rainfall, the complaints will be prioritized so that PWSA field crews will visit those properties first that are having continued backups. And once the rain or flooding stops, PWSA field crews will begin the investigation and use cameras to televise the public sewer to see if there's debris or damage to the PWSA pipe that is causing the backup. So if there is, it will be addressed. And as a courtesy to the property owner, and when possible, PWSA will also try to televise the property owner's sewer lateral up to their plumbing trap to see if their lateral might be causing the problem. So the lateral is the pipe that conveys sewage from their property to the public sewer. So field crews will then report to the property owner what they found, or they'll leave a door hanger if nobody is home. Certain areas in the wastewater system can experience backups with heavy rain, and increased development over the years is contributing more flow to undersized pipes, and the cost and disruption of increasing pipe size to convey the flow. In some cases, other utilities in the street makes increasing the pipe size to convey the flow more difficult, or areas downstream are also over capacity. Storms are more frequent and intense in recent years, and this is also adding to the problem. The most important thing is to always report these issues so that PWSA or your sewer authority can be aware of the location of the problems. If there seems to be sufficient capacity in the public sewer and your backup is an isolated occurrence in your neighborhood, you may want to have your interior plumbing checked. Every stormwater problem is unique, and things like downsloping driveways or the way downspouts are connected to your sewer lateral may affect this. If your sewer lateral needs a repair, check with your municipality on what portion you are responsible for. In the PWSA service area, the property owner is responsible for their lateral from the tap or Y, which is where it joins the public sewer, all the way to their property. So you'll want to take special health and safety precautions when cleaning up after a basement backup. So see the link for the PWSA Sewage Backups webpage provided on the resources sheet for recommendations. Next slide, please, Mary. All right, so the next stormwater problem we'll talk about is a wet basement. This is pretty common in the Pittsburgh area, and you may have noticed some damp areas on the walls or in the cracks in the floor, or water seeping in near window wells in your own basement. And this seems to be particularly common after a big rain. Next slide. All right, so for our next poll, if you are experiencing a wet basement, which is rain or moisture coming through the walls or window, who should you call? The commercial remediation company, the sewer authority, or 911. Well, I think you all have this exactly right. So if you are experiencing a wet basement, as you all correctly surmised, you would call a commercial company that specializes in remediation. Next slide, Mary. All right, so before you call this commercial company, you can start with some simple solutions, like make sure that the ground slopes away from your house, that your gutters are clean, and all stormwater is being conveyed away from the foundation. An interior gutter around the perimeter of your basement walls routes water to a floor drain or a sump pump. Finally, exterior perimeter drains may be necessary and can include exposing the exterior foundation, covering it with a waterproof membrane, and laying perimeter footing drains. But this can be very expensive and require replacement of landscaping. So while we can't recommend specific contractors, you can ask your neighbors if their contractors solved their problem and if they would use them again. You can also use apps like Home Advisor or Nextdoor, as we show here, for recommendations of reputable contractors. The contractor should be insured and guarantee their work. Remember, it's often useful to talk to several firms and get a firm cost with detailed specifications. Next slide, Mary. So finally, the most potentially dangerous and devastating flooding problem is riverine and surface flooding. This can be due to a local stream or river spilling over its banks in the case of riverine flooding, or can often occur in areas that are nowhere near a waterway due to excessive stormwater runoff. So I think it's time for another poll. Who should you call if you are experiencing surface or river stream flooding? A commercial company that specializes in remediation, a sewer authority, or 911? You are all exactly right. You should call 911. Sometimes street flooding is caused by a blocked storm drain. So we just wanted to mention that you should always keep an eye on the grate in front of your home between storms and keep it clean. Also, please don't use that storm drain to dump oil, chemicals, or concrete. Allegheny Cleanways has a program called Grate Keepers, where volunteers can help prevent flooding and reduce pollution by keeping their adopted storm drains free of trash and debris. We'll provide information on this resource page about Grate Keepers. So this is just some information about 911. So remember to call 911 if you think it's a life-threatening situation or may cause property damage. And next slide, please. So here are some pointers for when you do call 911. Are lives in danger? Is the flooding causing damage? If yes, please call 911. Stay calm and speak clearly. Know your exact location. Answer all the questions asked. When asked, explain what is occurring in detail. Describe the damage and indicate if it is on public or private property. So if it's road deterioration, yard erosion, interior home damage, etc. Tell them the location of flooding, street, yard, building interior. Are other properties experiencing flooding? Has flooding happened here before? Follow all the instructions you're giving and do not hang up until told to do so. And then stay close to your phone because the telecommunications operator may call you back. So next slide. So for non-emergencies, you can report flooding to PWSA dispatch at 412-255-2423 if you live in the city of Pittsburgh. And you can also report this to the City of Pittsburgh's 311 Response Center. In addition, many municipalities also keep logs of where flooding occurs. So if you are able, call your municipality after you call 911. Next slide, please. So now it's time for a little pop quiz to review some of the main points from this presentation. So first question, true or false? You should call your local sewer authority to report surface or river stream flooding. So, all right, it looks like most of you are answering false. Next slide, please, Mary. The correct answer is false. Call 911 if it appears that the health or safety of others is threatened, and make sure that you're safe and immediately call 911. Then report to PWSA dispatch at the following number or the email if you live in the city of Pittsburgh. And you can also report this to the City of Pittsburgh's 311 Response Center at this URL that we provided. And in addition, many municipalities keep logs of where flooding occurs. So if you are able, call your municipality after you call 911. Good job, everyone. All right, the next question. You have an elderly neighbor that doesn't have a cell phone or internet. How can they be alerted of flooding? So if you could, for this one, if you could add your response to the chat, Lisa will read everyone's responses.
Call their landline. That's definitely, especially most elderly people still have landlines. Check on them yourself. Go visit them. TV, radio, another way. How can they be alerted? Absolutely. Alert folks to approaching rain events and stay in touch. It's also, yes, get to know your neighbors, stay in touch with them. That's a good way. If you think they are in danger, call 911 and have the police, fire, do a welfare check. Absolutely. These are all very good responses.
Okay, very good. So if you have an elderly neighbor that doesn't have a cell phone or internet, they can turn their TV or radio on for news updates. We had that. If there isn't power and they have a land phone line, their municipality may have a system to make phone calls in the event of an emergency. So for example, Etna Borough has Swift Reach 911. And if it's safe, keep in touch with them until the severe event has safely passed. So I think you all covered all bases there. All right, next slide, please, Mary. All right, when is flooding more likely? With a flood warning or a watch? Let's see if everyone's paying attention. This is very confusing and it always tripped me up until we practiced this presentation a dozen times. All right, a flood warning means that flooding is occurring or will occur soon. And a watch just means that a flood is possible. So as I said, now we're currently under a flash flood watch.
Warning is longer, so it's more important.
That's right. There you go. Whatever it takes to remember it.
Right.
All right. This is our last question. So Myrna gets almost all the way home during a heavy rainstorm. She notices that there's some water on the road between her house and her car. She says, that water is only about a foot deep and it looks like it's not moving very fast. I'll just leave my car in a parking lot nearby and I bet if I run across the water quickly, I'll be fine. Is it safe for her to do this? All right, I think that everyone get the turnaround, don't drown message. So next slide, Mary. No, Myrna, don't do it. Myrna should stay in her car and drive to higher ground to a safe area. She could call 911 to check when it is safe to cross the road. Remember, turn around, don't drown.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Beth. So today we looked at how you can find out if flooding is occurring in your area, what you can do to protect yourself, your family, and your home when it is flooding, and who to call when it's flooding. We know we went over a lot of things and we wanted to show you this list of resources again, so you can look at those flood alerts again. And then this information is also provided in the resource packet that we've been talking about. And someone asked about when will this resource packet be available. So unfortunately, the software that we use to kind of get this event out, Eventbrite, it doesn't allow us to email things to people. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to be sharing all of this information to the Silver Jackets website. And if somebody could type the Silver Jackets website, Lisa or Beth, if you all have that handy, would either one of you be able to put it in the chat just so people could see that and take note of it? You can also just Google PA Silver Jackets. Silver Jackets, and when you go to the site, you'll see state teams, and then select Pennsylvania. And on this Pennsylvania Silver Jackets site, that's where we're going to be putting all of the recordings of all of these webinars. So if you missed one, this is a really good way to watch that again or rewatch this one to rehear these tips. And like we mentioned, that resource page, which will be a PDF, will list all the websites we talked about, list that emergency kit kind of checklist, as well as other really useful resources that we've found. There's some of those online resources right now. We'll just leave those up. Like I said, they're going to be on the resource packet as well. Yeah, and there's the Silver Jackets Pennsylvania team. Excellent. Thank you, Beth. So after today's presentation, you may still be wondering about more specific things that you can do to protect yourself and your family from flooding, and you might find those answers in some of those other presentations from the previous ones. And if you missed those, you can go to the Silver Jackets website and rewatch them. Thank you again for attending. We have one more presentation that'll be next week. That's recovering from flooding, and we welcome you to hopefully enjoy that one. And if you have any questions at this point, we are going to stop the recording now. So Lisa, if you wouldn't mind stopping the recording. And if anybody wants to come off mute, they're welcome to do so. Otherwise, you can put any questions you may